Yo, it's the Casual Cube here, and I hope the holiday season's been treating you guys really well. It's been super hectic for me, really busy, but that's a good thing. Last Friday Night Magic, last week I had the intentions to go to my FNM, but yeah, I was just way too busy, and yeah, just something came up, and then on Saturday I was like, well, I'll make up for it. I'll go to a Saturday standard showdown, but you know, my main local game store doesn't do it. They're really nice like game store, but they do a lot of tabletop and they have a lot of events on Saturday. So I guess that's why they don't do a standard showdown. So I was thinking about going to my my number two game store, but I just don't like going over there anymore. It's just the people. I'm not going to say anything bad about them. I just feel like it's much more cliquey. And I was gonna find another game store to do standard showdown, but yeah, I just ended up. I think like I was like eating leftover turkey, and I had a couple beers, and I was like, I don't want to. I'm just gonna be lazy. But anyways, so this Friday Night Magic, it's week number 9, I believe. So yeah, it's November 30th, Friday. So I'm recording this about midday, and hopefully it'll upload before Friday Night Magic. But anyways, this is the Planeswalker Deck Challenge. This is Planeswalker Deck Challenge number 2. This one's with Vraska, Regal Gorgon. The first one I did was Raw, Caller of Storms, which was an Izzet, red-blue. In that build, I kind of went with Wizards because... Well, first of all, like this Planeswalker Deck Challenge thing, it's strictly just for fun. I'm not trying to prove anything. It's just, it's like a little mini challenge just for myself because it makes you think about deck building and it's like a budget challenge, if you will. And I like that kind of stuff. But then afterward, after you're done with all this, you can have a nice, Planeswalker deck that you can pull out of your shelf or off the shelf and. Someone brand new comes over and they don't know how to play, you can give them one of these, and yeah, I'm trying to make something for everyone. Some that has like a warrior or an archer or like a mage. In this case, Vraska, it's kind of the graveyard shenanigans. So yeah, let's get into what the actual challenge is. Again, it's strictly just for fun. It's not trying to prove anything. But yeah, it's just something that I enjoy personally. So yeah, we're gonna take a Planeswalker deck, and if you don't know, if you've never bought a Planeswalker deck, the vast majority of the cards are pretty unplayable as far as Friday Night Magic standard meta. Actually, if you were to look at the top decks for standard, the vast majority of the cards in a Planeswalker deck are not going to be able to compete with that. So we're gonna have to swap out a lot of them. And my main goal is to do a budget build, so I'm not necessarily trying to pour in above $30. Before I think I crossed like 12, $13. But if you can, try to stick it to $5 to $10, just because it's really going to force you to think about not using the overpowered cards, and also if you don't want this to be your main deck and you're taking this for Friday Night Magic, it's not that big of a deal. Obviously, if you're going to have a bigger budget, you can probably build a stronger deck, but as far as the challenge, it's just for fun. We're going to try and stick below $25 US, or maybe up to $30 US is probably reasonable. Kind of like the challenger decks from before, which were I think MSRP'd at $29.99. But anyways, yeah, so we're going to take it to an FNM, and the ultimate goal is to go 50-50, to go 2 wins and 2 losses. The last time I did this with the Raw Planeswalker deck, I went 1-2. I got the first round bye, which was really unfortunate because I just automatically knew that was going to be bad news because unless I went 2-1, yeah, you can't go because I know I was going to lose at least twice with the Planeswalker deck, so just getting that 1 win was lucky enough, and I think it was actually a new player that I beat against. Yeah, and you'll actually see that in my FNM monthly report, which, after week number 9, since I missed week number 8, I'll compile that and show all my results. But anyways, that's the challenge. So if we're going to look at the exclusive unique cards for Vraska, the Regal Gorgon, as you can see here, she's a 7 mana Planeswalker, which is really, really heavy. And on top of that, she doesn't come down with 6 loyalty, which would have been really nice, because then you could have used her -3 twice to destroy creatures twice for 7 mana, which would be really nice. But unfortunately, at Planeswalker deck levels, we're just going to be able to deal with it. She's really not that good. She's actually pretty bad, but the art is freaking sweet. I love the art. That's actually probably the main reason why I'm really attracted to these Planeswalker decks, is because the art is so sweet. At least for the raw one and Vraska, they're both pretty cool. But also like the M19, particularly Vivian of the Arcbow, really love that art. But anyways, I'm just kind of kind of going off topic now. But ultimately, she's really weak, being a 7 mana 5 loyalty Planeswalker. But she does affect the board, which is nice because you can -3 her and immediately destroy a creature. But another cool thing that I really like about Vraska in this Planeswalker deck is her tutor card, which, if you don't know what a tutor card is, it's essentially you go through your library or your deck of cards, and you can pull out Vraska Regal Gorgon with Vraska's Stone Glare. And we're going to get 2 copies of these at 6 mana. It is a sorcery speed, but again, it does affect the board, so you can automatically destroy a creature. On top of that, you also get a nice little bonus. You gain life equal to its toughness. So if you're killing something like an Enigma Drake or a Crackling Drake or whatever, that's 4 toughness, and there you go. It's a 6 mana kill spell, but gain the 4 life. I don't know, it might help. And also, it doesn't just affect your library. If you have Vraska Regal Gorgon in your graveyard, maybe you're going against a really long control deck, a long game, you can actually use Vraska Stone Glare maybe against some big creature that they have, like a Lyra Dawnbringer or whatever, and you can pull out Vraska from your graveyard if she is in your graveyard. So that's kind of a nice little perk. Otherwise, these cards on the right over here, as far as the Planeswalker deck unique cards, Crawl Raider, 3 mana, 2/3 with Menace. Honestly, you'd really like to see this at a minimum of 3 power and 2 toughness. But really, it'd be nice if it was a 3/3 Menace. That'd be pretty sweet, but unfortunately it's not. So I think the power level of this card is not that good, so we're going to have to take these out, even though we get 4 copies of it. And then the Attendant of Vraska I actually really like, but it's just, the cards that rely on a Planeswalker to be on the battlefield is just not really consistent, just because the frequency of getting both the Planeswalker and the card itself, I mean, it is going to happen. It's just not going to be a reliable, just I think as far as the odds are, it's not going to be a reliable strategy. So, and on top of that, I mean, it's only when it dies you gain life equal to its power, which is 3. So it's at its bare minimum, it's a 3 mana 3/3, which it's good for Planeswalker deck level. And also, perk is, it's a zombie, so if you want to go with something like Golgari zombies, build something crazy, you could possibly use it. So, but for the most part, we're mainly going to stick with Vraska Regal Gorgon and Vraska Stone Glare as part of the Planeswalker deck challenge, because that's kind of the spirit of the Planeswalker deck right there, is these, the cards on the left over here, and the cards on the right, we're just going to take out and swap them for better cards. But let's move on into the actual mana curve. And as you can see here, it's kind of just like a mid-range deck. A lot of 3 drops, and we have a little bit of 5, 6, and 7s. If you're playing 7 mana plays, once you go beyond 5, it really starts getting pretty heavy. Like the cards have to be worthwhile to actually play them, and Vraska being a 7 mana Planeswalker, she's not really worthwhile, but we're just gonna play it for fun. So now going into the creatures, so this is the default list. Once you open your Planeswalker deck, this is what you're gonna get. So you're gonna get some like Dev Karen, Dissident, and Iron Shell Beetles, which are good in draft. But as far as standard constructed playable, when you're dealing with people who are making more consistent decks and overall strategies, you're dealing with the top of the line net decks, the meta. Just go to MTG Goldfish and look at the standard meta and look at the percentages. There's going to be a lot of Golgari midrange, a lot of Jeskai Control, Is It Drakes, Arc-like Phoenix Drakes or whatever. So just look at that, and you're going to realize that all the stuff in the Planeswalker deck we're just going to swap out. So the main thing that I really like is the Glowspore Shaman, though, because it does get stuff in the graveyard. and it could fix our lands, but also the main reason why I really like it is because it's a 3 power 2-drop, and so that means like we can utilize this as an aggressive early game play, and we can really start being aggressive early in the game. And the Storm Guild Mage I think is one of the weaker guild mages, just from what I've been hearing. It could be used as a finisher, but really it feels more something along, I don't know who said this. I was watching a draft video and someone said if the Swarm Guild Mage for the 4 mana and black, if you can tap it, instead of getting that creatures you control get +1 power and gain menace, if that could have been something like take a target creature from your graveyard and put it into your hand, that would be so much better. But that's not to say as far as Planeswalker deck levels, if you're going in the kitchen table meta against another Planeswalker deck, Storm Guild Mage is it's totally viable. It's it's a decent card because it could be used as a finisher later in the game. But in my mind, I think we're gonna have to swap that one out. So going into the 3-drops, again, those Crawl Raiders I think are just slightly below what we need them to be if we wanted to include it. If it was a 3 mana 3/3 with menace, I think that'd be much more likely to be considered. But at 2/3, I think we're gonna have to take it out. The Spinal Centipede is another card that's pretty decent in draft because you get that value with that +1/+1 counter after it dies. But as far as Planeswalker deck levels, I think we are safe to take this one out. And the Attendant of Vraska, again, at its bare minimum is 3 mana 3/3. So Planeswalker deck kitchen table meta, it's totally viable. But as far as standard FNM meta, we're gonna take it out because there's just better 3-drops, and at an affordable rate too, where we could get non-expensive cards in these slots. So going on into the 4-drops for creatures, the Beast Whisperer here is really, really nice because anytime you can draw a card and get value off of that, it's amazing. But I think Beast Whisperer is more designed in a because it is a 4 mana 2/3, which is not good stats. You really want to go off on this card. You really want to, once it resolves and on your next turn, you want to go crazy where you draw a bunch of cards. So something like the Elf Ball decks where they have the Elf Tribal, and they have Llanowar Elves and a bunch of 1-drop elves and 2-drop elves. So that way, once you play Beast Whisper on your next turn, you can go ham. You can just go crazy. You play your 1-drop elf, 2-drop elf, draw cards, and then you draw into more creatures, and then you play another one mana elf or whatever, and you just drew like 3 cards right then and there. So it is a great card. It's just it has to be put in a deck with that design in mind. So an Elf Tribal deck or Elf Ball or whatever it is called. That's where it's really going to play out. But as far as our deck, at least in my mind, for the graveyard mid-range deck that I'm going to try and rebuild this into, I think we can be safe to take this one out because I don't think we're going to go crazy. We're not going to have a bunch of 1-drops or 2-drops. Well, actually, we were going to have a bunch of 2-drops, but we're not going to have a bunch of 1-drops where we can go crazy with, like Llanowar Elves and the Pelt Collector or whatever it is. So yeah, it's a good card, but it's just, and it is one of the rares that we get in the Planeswalker deck, but we're going to take it out just because I don't think it has a nice fit in what I had in mind. Now the Partisan Bats, 4 mana 3/1, we're just going to take this one out because, it's just not good. Maybe in draft, but even then it's like 4 mana for 3/1. We're going to have to take that one out. And the Wild Ceratok, 4 mana 4/3, again, just nothing going on for it. It is sweet looking, but we're going to have to take that one out as well. And the Rhizome Lurcher over here, I really like that it does, it is a card where it considers the graveyard, and I like that for the theme of the deck. But, I think this card is better in draft, but in constructed, I think it's going to get chunk blocked way too much. And I don't know. I mean, I think it could be potentially good in constructed, but yeah, I don't know. I think I'm going to consider some other options instead of this. But again, as far as Planeswalker deck meta, I like that they included the Rhizome Lurcher because you want to see more flavorful cards where it considers the graveyard in a Golgari deck, right? You want to in the green black graveyard matters. You want to see that kind of flavor. So I'm glad they included 2 of these in there. Moving on to the 5-drops. Again, we're just gonna get some draft cards. I mean, these are, you know, 2 commons that are decent in draft, in the Guilds of Ravnica draft. You know, a 5-mana 4/5. It's hard to deal with, but in constructed, it's just not a strong card as far as power level. It's just a basic vanilla 4/5 for 5 mana. It's like nothing going on for it. And yeah, the Crawl Foragers, you know, gaining life. It's really not a good payoff. Yeah, sure, life is nice, but at 5 mana for a 4/4, I mean, it's all right. But again, it's mainly a draft card, I think. And to top it all off, the Lot Giant. Again, I like, you know, the Graveyard Matters. You know, it is flavorful, but you know, in this case, it is 7 mana. So you know, you can definitely see yourself playing like 30 creatures and then playing this as your top end. And then you have a bunch of creatures in your graveyard. Maybe you want to go with like a Death Touch build where you're constantly trading into stuff, or they're attacking into you and you're trading with your Death Touchers. And then all of a sudden you have like 8 creature cards in your graveyard. Then all of a sudden, you know, later in the game you top off with the Lot Giant. You just dealt like 8 damage to them, or you know, whatever. Hope, you know, in the dream scenario you deal like 10 damage and finish them off or whatever. Earlier in the game you get them down to 10. That's the dream scenario, but more likely it's just going to be a 6/5, which is nothing to laugh at. But at 7 mana, it's like there's, you know, I think we really want to steer away from the 7 mana plays, because, you know, once you're starting to get beyond 5 mana, it's, you know, the cards at 6 mana and 7 mana really have to do some work. I mean, they gotta really, you know, do some crazy stuff to be worthwhile in a constructed deck, because otherwise it's going to take too long to get there. It's going to be stuck in your hand. And the dream scenarios, of course, you know, in your mind it seems awesome, but in practicality and in reality, you know, the odds are it's not going to play out that way. It's yeah, I mean, we're already playing with Vraska, who is already at 7 mana anyways, so I think that's kind of where we want to top end at, and I don't think we want to include you know, the Lot Giant, just because I don't think it's that impactful. But yeah, it is flavorful though for the deck. Now moving on to non-creatures. Excuse me. Moving on to non-creatures, we're going to get our 3 deadweights, which is pretty sweet. I love the deadweights here. They kind of act as shock. You know, in red. If you don't know what shock is, it deals 2 damage to any target. In this case, it's only going to affect creatures, so you're going to want to use this against your opponent, enemy creatures. So you give them -2/-2. So that's actually really nice, because you can actually kill Adonto Vanguard, which is really rampant nowadays in the white decks, because you know, anytime it takes damage, they can pay the 4 life and give it indestructible, but -2/-2 goes around that. It goes through indestructible, which is pretty nice. Now Prey Upon over here, again, in the Planeswalker deck meta, in the kitchen table meta, I think it's definitely playable. You might want to include, you know, swap out some of your other cards for some Death Touchers, and then that would make this card way better, because then, you know, you can trade off your Death Touchers into their biggest creature with Prey Upon. But otherwise, I think in constructed it's really not that good, unless you are playing with a, you know, insane amount of Death Touchers. But in my case, in my rebuild, I don't think I'm playing with a bunch of Death Touchers, so we're just going to take out the Prey Upons. But I do like the Deadweights. The Deadweights are sweet. Now it just goes straight into the 6 drops for non-creature spells. Yeah, again, the 2 Vraska Stoneglare, we're going to keep them in there because it's part of the challenge, I think. The spirit of the Planeswalker deck, with the Planeswalker deck card, I mean the Planeswalker card, as well as the Tutor. Those cards are, you know, they compile into the core of the idea of the challenge, I think. So we're going to include the Vraska Stoneglare, even though it is really, really slow. At least it does kill a creature, though, which I really like, as opposed to the raw Caller of Storms. In the previous, you know, I actually played with that in the Friday Night Magic, and it was horrible. I mean, it was a 5 mana bounce spell where just, you know, return target creature back into the hand. I think you can use it on your own or the enemy creature, which is, you know, it is flexible, but at 5 mana and it doesn't kill it, it's just like, ugh. It just felt so bad to play, so I think I ended up putting in the sideboard, which is kind of cheating, I guess, but it is still considered the 75, so maybe it is still part of the Planeswalker deck challenge, I don't know. But I really think in that case, with the raw Planeswalker deck, with a 5 mana, as opposed to this 6 mana kill, for the 5 mana bounce, I think it's better off if you put in the sideboard and then, you know, combine it with some counter spells, like an Essence Scatter. That way you can bounce, you know, big creatures, maybe like a Galta, or you know, like a Lyra Dawnbringer, and then you can counter on the next turn with an Essence Scatter or something like that. I don't know. It felt really bad to play with, but I think this one's going to be more playable because it does kill the creature, and you also get the perk of getting that little bit of life. And the Bounty of Might I actually really like because it's kind of like the ace card in the deck where, all of a sudden, if they let one of our creatures slip by unblocked, we kill them like right then and there with a +3/+3 ×3 onto that one target, because you can put all the target creatures onto one target creature. So you can put this onto that one creature that snuck by. Maybe they let them in unblocked because they didn't take it seriously, and then all of a sudden, boom, you play the Bounty of Might. You just dealt 9 damage plus whatever that creature's damage is. I think it's going to be a nice ace in the hole for us in our deck. So I think that's a nice rare that they included. And then, of course, Vraska, the Regal Gorgon, which, awesome art. But as far as Planeswalker deck level, I really wish she came in with this 6 loyalty, so that way we can use her -3 twice, but unfortunately not. So, yeah, we're just going to have to live with it. But yeah. The land base, this is our land base right here, 4 Golgari Guildgates, 10 forests, 12 swamps. It's a decent land base. I mean, I guess if we're playing with a Lot Giant and the Vraska, we got to get our lands. But yeah, nothing really special about it. Now, how are we going to rebuild this deck? I already kind of, have a piece of paper where, I was kind of writing down a bunch of different thoughts and stuff. Anytime you're deck building, use a word editor, or write it down on a piece of paper, or whatever you want to do. Just compile your thoughts. Try and find a place where you want to start. In my case, I went with the most conservative version, which I think is the Golgari graveyard midrange kind of strategy. Now, if you don't know what the regular Golgari midrange is, it's really expensive, first of all, but yeah, you can just go to NTG Goldfish, look at the meta decks, the top of the meta. I think Golgari is the most percentage of the meta. So they represent a lot of the field, and I do have people who play Golgari at my FNM, so I do got to keep that in mind. But we are on a huge budget, and we're not going to be able to pour in the money on the Vivian, the Core Set 19 Vivian from the 5-mana one that can destroy enchantments or whatever. And we're not going to be able to get the new Vraska from the actual Guilds of Ravnica booster packs, the good one, or the big Vraska from Ixalan that creates pirate tokens. We don't have the budget for that, so we're really going to have to think differently as far as how we're going to build this. And I think we could build something decent with the graveyard mid-range kind of strategy. So in this case, I'm going to go with the Coral Harpooners, because I think paired with the Glowspore Shamans, another 3-power 2-mana play creature, this is going to be a great start early in the game to be aggressive. So, and also could trade up. Maybe we have 2 3-power creatures for 2 mana, like a Coral Harpooner with a Glowspore Shaman, and then all of a sudden we can trade into a Carnage Tyrant with 6 toughness. So the 3-power 2-mana plays I think is really nice. And also the perk about Coral Harpooner is it does have that undergrowth where later in the game, once you start accumulating creatures in your graveyard, there's a lot of angels, there's a lot of flyers, there's Lyra Dawnbringers, Resplendent Angel, Aurelia, in the Boros Angels deck, or the Izzet Drakes. There's a lot of flyers out there. So Coral Harpooner is kind of like the anti-air that we really need. It's going to be good in the early game as a 2-mana 3/2, which is really solid. And also, just later in the game, we can start playing it essentially as an anti-air removal against those kind of decks, which I really think is nice. And also, after that, it goes into the graveyard, so we can use it for our Charnel Trolls. And I really like Charnel Troll because I had a great experience playing with it in my pre-release. It did so much work. I think I won 2 or 3 games with it alone because they couldn't deal with it. But it does require stuff to be in the graveyard, and it does remove a bunch of stuff in the graveyard. So it is counterintuitive as far as if we are going to go with Undergrowth, the Charnel Troll goes against that because it's taking away Undergrowth potential. But I think it is still worth it because it comes out as a 3-mana 4/4, which is ahead of the game. Typically a 3-mana play creature at least is going to have a 3/3 in stats. I think on average, if we were to look at all the recent cards, I don't know about the old days, but in the more modern Magic, from what I've been seeing, a 3-mana 3/3 is about average. And on top of that, we get the trample built into it. So this is a great play. It's not like a Steel Leaf Champion where it's a 5/4, 3 green mana for it. But for the Charnel Troll, I think, coming down as a 4/4 with the trample built in, and then all of a sudden we can start, plugging away, exiling creature cards from our own graveyard, and then adding counters to it, and then all of a sudden, it just becomes a nasty threat early in the game, or I mean, more in the mid game, and they're gonna have to deal with it. They're gonna have to either trade into it, block it because they realize, holy crap, it's getting really, really big, or it's gonna be a solid 4/4 for 3 mana that we can block with later in the game. So I think it's kind of a good card. It's a good budget card that I think is really affordable that we can slap into the into this Planeswalker Deck challenge. So that's kind of, I'll show you my list here in a second, but I'm just kind of thinking about all the different conservative ideas of how are we going to rebuild this if we really want to win at our FNM. Another thing is that you can really kind of do what I did with the Raw Planeswalker Deck challenge, where I took out, essentially I went with tribal ideas because everyone was playing Drakes. Everyone is still playing with Drakes, and I said in that video as well that if you really wanted to win, you play with Izzet Drakes. If you wanted to go, the Izzet colors, blue, red, as far as the Raw Planeswalker Deck challenge, Raw Color of Storms. But in that case, I wanted to kind of zig as opposed to everyone zagging, so I kind of wanted to go a different direction, and I went with the Wizard Tribal, which is it's definitely not as strong, but I think it's more flavorful as a wizard deck, and putting that on the kitchen shelf, having friends come over and they want to play the mage deck or the wizard deck or whatever. I think that was the right move as far as what I personally wanted to build. So. But kind of that version, as far as the Golgari colors, if you want to go tribal, probably the best way is to go with the Fungus and Saprolings. It's I definitely think you can win with it. You can do some crazy stuff in it. Maybe even throw in like a Torgar, which is a legendary creature where you can sacrifice a bunch of your tokens, and then all of a sudden it sets your opponent to half HP. If you look at Torgar, I think Famine Incarnate, I didn't include it here in this picture over here, but you can slap that in there. You can go crazy with the Saproling tokens kind of strategy. There's a lot of cool stuff you can do in that space. So, but moving on to the crazy version, I think if you wanted to go something like a Golgari Control, go with like the Fine Finality, go with Endurance kind of Golgari, where you have just you're removing creatures, and then all of a sudden you have a big bomb later in the game like a Tetzamach. I think that definitely could be a viable strategy, and it is kind of a off-the-shelf crazy version of the Planeswalker Deck challenge. So if you want to do that, give that a shot. I think it'd be kind of interesting. I didn't do it, but just another idea to throw out there. And then here, Golgari Elves. Honestly, I never really thought too much about Golgari Elves, but I think typically I think with elves you think of like the green, obviously, with Elvish Clan Caller and like the Llanowar elves, and maybe Selesnya. There's a lot of Selesnya elves, but I think Golgari Elves is we got the Ulgrin Assassin, we have the Glowspore Shaman, which we already have 2 copies of. There's also the the Golgari Finebroker, which is another elf. I mean, there's also that 4 mana from the core set 19, that 2/3 with the Death Touch, that has the reach, and also anytime one of your creatures dies, or anytime a creature dies, you deal 1 damage to your opponent. So there's a lot of nice Golgari Elves if you want to go in that direction. But I'm just giving some different ideas on how to rebuild the deck. Now let's go on into what I actually came up with as far as what we were going to rebuild it into. I decided to go with the 4 Llanowar Elves. So if you look at all the Golgari midrange decks nowadays, they all play with Llanowar Elves, and there's good reason to, because ramp in Magic the Gathering is just so crucial. I mean, it's always going to be a viable strategy. The fact that we can play this on turn 1, and then it automatically ramps us into, if we make our land drop, for the next turn, we can ramp into a 3-mana play on turn 2. So that's always going to be a strong play, and Magic the Gathering, that's always going to be relevant. So we're going to include the 4 Llanowar Elves. I'm deciding to go down to 2 Deadweights, strictly because I think playing with 3 is nice and everything, but I mean, this card is mainly good against aggro decks, and if we're going against, in game one at least, a deck that isn't really aggro, that where maybe it's like a bunch of Is It Drakes, 4 toughness stuff, or maybe it's more of a control deck where they finish off the game with big bombs, and deadweight isn't as good, then just playing with half a playset with 2 isn't going to be as harmful. But mainly this is going to be used as a 1-mana removal for those aggro decks, where we could take out any 2 toughness creature, or if we attack with all of our creatures and we can bring down, they block with whatever creature and it has 2 life left, we can finish it off with a deadweight. After they block one of our attacking creatures, now it's weakened. Now we can use a deadweight. And as far as our 2-drop suite, we're going to include a bunch of, we're going to finish off. The Planeswalker deck includes 2 Glowspore Shamans. I'm going to top that off to back up to 4. And we're going to include all 4 Crawl Harpooners. And then we're also going to throw in the Seeker Squire, because it's the most affordable, I think, of the Explorer 2-drops. The green one, the Branch Walker, and then obviously the Jadelight Ranger for the 3-drop. Those are really expensive. Well, the Jadelight Ranger is expensive. The Merfolk Branch Walker, I think, is kind of affordable, but I think Seeker Squire is the most affordable one. And also, if we can fix our lands, we explore off the top and we can potentially get a land. If not, we can throw it in the bin if it's a creature that we don't need. Maybe later in the game, we can just throw it into the graveyard, and then all of a sudden we have another creature in the graveyard. Or we can just leave it on top if it's a card that we do need. So it's a lot of flexibility in the Seeker Squire, and I just think it's a nice card. Even if we do get a land off it and we don't put a +1/+1 counter, we can just chump block with it, and then all of a sudden we have another creature card in our graveyard. So I think it's just a nice inclusion for our 2-drop plays, and now all of a sudden we have 12 2-drop creatures with this kind of our Golgari 2-mana creature suite over here. And I'm going to include one Find Finality. I just I opened one in a pack. Now I think they're really affordable. When I was first starting to make my deck list ideas, I think it was like trading at like $150 or $2, so I didn't include a full playset. I don't even think people are playing full playsets. I think they're playing with 2 or 3 copies. Now it's much more affordable. I think it's like 50 cents. Well, I don't think it's that low, but I think maybe it's like 75 cents to $1 now. As of this recording on November 30th. So you might want to upgrade this to maybe 2 copies or 3 copies, but in my case I only opened one from a booster, so I just decided to throw in one into the mix. And I included it in the 2-drop slot because of course Finality does go up to 6 mana, but a lot of times we're just going to be using Find to get back 2 creatures. Now moving on into the 3-drops. Now I really like Charnel Troll. Like I said, I think there's a lot of positives with Charnel Troll, even though it is counterintuitive with the Undergrowth as far as Crawl Harpooner. But that's the only card that, in as far as my rebuild, is concerned with the graveyard as far as Undergrowth. So Charnel Troll isn't going to be as detrimental to our strategy because our only Undergrowth payoff is the Crawl Harpooner. And the Crawl Harpooner is just solid, even if it doesn't hit the Undergrowth. It's a solid 2-mana 3/2 with reach. Now, the Charnel Troll, though, I'm not going to play 4 copies because I think it is a good card. It's just I don't think we play the full playset because it does require that we have ammunition in our graveyard. So it's not a card that we want to play a full playset. We do want to have other cards in our graveyard earlier in the game before it starts getting going. And I think having multiple Charnel Trolls on the battlefield is going to be it's just diminishing returns, I guess is the best way to say it. It's not as strong when we have multiples on the battlefield. It's strong by itself when we have a bunch of ammunition in our graveyard, but if we have 2 or even 3 in some rare cases, then all of a sudden every time we're on our upkeep, if we have 3 on the battlefield or 2 on the battlefield, we have to constantly remove a bunch of creature cards, and then all of a sudden our ammunition in our graveyard is going to be it's going to run out really, really quickly. And then if they start removing it, the Charnel Trolls, then it just really loses its effectiveness. Or in the worst case, if we do remove all of our creature cards from our graveyard with the exile, because it is a mandatory effect, it's not something that we can choose, it's not a may, it's a you have to. yeah, so the possibility of this being sacrificed with multiple copies, I think it is real, and I think we're only going to play with 3 copies as opposed to a full play set. So now the Midnight Reaper, though, I think is really, really solid because there's a bunch of board sweepers out there. You know, Jeskai Control is playing with the Deafening Clarions. You know, even against other removal, even if this gets removed, the Midnight Reaper, if it gets 1 for 1, we're going to get another card off of it. So that's really solid because, first of all, against the board clear scenario, if we have, you know, two drops and then we have a Midnight Reaper and then we get board swept by a Deafening Clarion, of course it's going to deal 3 damage to us, but we just, you know, drew 3 cards. So that's going to help us sustain ourselves in the case of a 3 for 1 like a Deafening Clarion against our weak early game board. Or like a Cleansing Nova, or Ritual of Suit, or whatever. But, you know, with the Midnight Reaper, even if it does get 1 for 1, because the opponent is going to have to consider that, you know, this is an engine where we can potentially draw cards if they remove our other creatures. So they're going to have to consider removing this first automatically, because if they don't and they remove another creature, we're going to be getting lots of value, because we're going to get value from the creature that they removed. Say there's a Charnel Troll on board, it gets hit by a, you know, I don't know, a murder or a, you know, any kind of removal spell. We're going to draw a card off of that, and then they have to deal with our Midnight Reaper still. And then once they kill the Midnight Reaper, well, we just drew another card. So it's just a nice solid card in game 1 where, you know, with all the board sweepers going around, I think in game 1 this is a solid card. Now, there is an argument to say, you know, game 1, let's throw in the 4 Plaguecrafters, but I think Plaguecrafter is going to be better off in the sideboard against all of the aggro decks. You know, because in game 1, you know, we're probably going to anticipate, you know, some aggro, mono white aggro, maybe mono red aggro, where they flood the board, where Plaguecrafter isn't going to be as effective because they're just going to sacrifice their, you know, smallest creatures. So I think in game 1, Midnight Reaper playing the full play set is going to be much better, and then we're going to have the Plaguecrafters coming from the sideboard against the Teferi decks, where it's going to be much more impactful, where they're not going to have a bunch of small chump blockers that they can sacrifice. They're going to have to sacrifice their Teferi. So we're going to, you know, use that from the sideboard. Now going on into the 4 drops, I'm only going to include 1 Golgari Findbroker. I don't think we have the mana base to sustain 2 or 3. So I think it's a nice 1 of just to return target permanent. So we can get our deadweights back. So we have 2 deadweights and then 1 Rite of Belzenok. But most of the time, you're probably going to use Golgari Findbroker on another creature. I think it's just solid as a 1 of. Now, you know, if you play 2 copies of it, you know, I think it's really nice because the potential to have a loop where you can Golgari Findbroker into another Golgari Findbroker is, you know, that's pretty cool. But, you know, I think, you know, as far as our mana base, I don't think we could sustain 2 copies or even 3 copies. I'm only going to play a 1 of. I think it's pretty nice, though, just to be able to get that recursion and then have a 3/4 body. Now, the Rite of Belzenok, I know this is kind of weird. Why are we throwing in a random Rite of Belzenok, right? Well, in my case, I'm just thinking of it as another win condition. So it does have the interaction with the Golgari Findbroker, and, you know, it does require, you know, 3 turns, essentially, to get the 6/6 Flying Demon. But that's another win condition, and there's no drawback. It's not like we're playing the Demon of Catastrophes where we have to sacrifice one of our own creatures. Instead, Rite of Belzenok is going to give us 4 tokens where, yes, again, it does take some time to get that 6/6 body out there. But once it is out there, I mean, it's a 6/6 flyer. And I think it is better than Demon of Catastrophes because it doesn't get 2 for 1 as bad. So in the case of Demon of Catastrophes, if our demon gets Demon of Catastrophes, which requires one of your creatures to get sacrificed, if that gets removed, you just went 2 cards for their 1 card. And that's never good because you want to be sustaining card advantage. And in Golgari, I think it's much more reasonable to, you know, get the card advantage because we have things like Golgari Findbroker or Find Finality where we can get our recursion. In the case of Rite of Belzenok, we're going to get 4 tokens, and then we're going to get a 6/6 you know, Demon Flyer, which is crazy because, you know, if they do remove that, well, we still have a bunch of, you know, creature tokens that we can chump block with, you know. So I just think it's another finisher, and it's just good as a 1 of. It's not like we're going to play multiple copies. I think it's just nice as a 1 of. And we're also going to include 2 status statues. Now, We're mainly going to be focusing on the statue part, which is a 4 mana, destroy target artifact, creature, or enchantment. And that's just so much flexibility that even in its worst case scenario, it's going to destroy a creature. Of course, at 4 mana, it's, there's better removal for creatures, at like 2 mana or 3 mana. But that flexibility is huge because if we're going against, mono white aggro decks, Conclave Tribunals rampant. If we're going against, artifact, the treasure maps. I mean, there's so much flexibility in this card. I think we can include 2 copies of it in the main deck for game 1, and then we're going to also include 2 copies from the sideboard. And I'm preferring this card over things like Thrashing Bronodon or Reclamation Sage, which also can remove artifacts and enchantments. I just really like status statues because not only is there 2 parts, it's just there's so much flexibility in the card that I think it is good to include 2 in the main and then 2 from the side. Now going on into the 6 drops, there's no 5 drops. I'm going to include 1 copy of the Tetzimoc. Now I know before I was talking about how we're going to rebuild the deck. Should we you can go the Gorgon Troll. But playing mono black, that one time I went 3-1 with my mono black deck. It was like $45 mono black deck. Playing with Tetzimoc was just so much fun, and I'm just gonna include him as a one-of. It's a spicy meatball. It also, if you can clear their board, or just even kill one of their biggest creatures, it's awesome. It's a great feeling, and yeah, I think it's a sweet card. So I'm gonna include one of, even though this deck isn't a Golgari control per se. And then, of course, the Vraska Stone Glare, we're going to include 2 copies of that because it is the Planeswalker Deck Challenge. And then I already talked about how I really liked the Bounty of Might, where if one of our attackers gets by, this could be used as a finisher. All of a sudden, boom, 9 plus 9/9 in stats, we can target, all of the target creatures onto one creature that got by. That's a win condition right there. That's the ace in the hole. So we're gonna keep that 1 copy in the deck. I think it is pretty spicy. And of course, Vraska herself. So that's the build. I went down to 25 lands. And, if you're a brand new player and you bought the Planeswalker deck, you're not going to, the ratio, you're going to have 4 Golgari Guildgates, 10 forests, and 12 swamps. So you might not necessarily have more lands if you're a brand new player. But, in my case, this is fine. But I actually think I'm going to go with, this is fine. I think I'm actually going to swap over to something like the 13 forests and the 12 swamps, so that way we can have the turn 1 Llanowar Elves, and we can really curve out. So we're not playing with the Golgari Guildgate. But, that's just me. There is going to be a chance where you get, like, let's say 3 swamps, and you really need that green land. There's chances of that, but I think for the FNM, from the last Planeswalker Deck Challenge with Raw, the Guildgate coming into play tapped, in a semi-competitive event with Friday Night Magic. Excuse me. I definitely think, just taking out the battlefield tap lands is totally fine and viable. And I think it's fine to risk it just for even though we are playing with 2 colors, sometimes we're gonna get screwed. That's okay. None of our lands are gonna come in tap though. So I think that I'm gonna come for Friday Night Magic for tonight. I'm gonna do this kind of build: the 13 forests and 12 swamps. That way we can have the turn 1 Llanowar Elves on curve. All right. So as far as the my build, as far as this kind of upgraded deck stats, we have 6 mana, 6 turn 1 plays, 13 turn 2, 7 turn 3, etc. So that makes 35, creatures and non-creatures, and then the 25 lands. And we're going to play with 25 total creatures and then 10 non-creature spells, including the Vraska. So here's the stats. Let me make sure, yeah, everything's looking right so far. Yep. All right, now the sideboard. We're going to go with the conservative 4 duresses because they're cheap, and also it's the anti-control because we can take out the Deafening Clarion or the Teferi. It's a non-creature, non-land, so the Cleansing Nova or whatever. It's solid against control, so we're going to slap in all 4 from the sideboard. And also against the anti-control from the sideboard, we're going to include those 4 Playcrafters that I was talking about earlier, because this is a great card from the sideboard where in game 1, if we are going against the white aggro deck or the red aggro deck, where they're just going to sacrifice their smallest creature. In our case, with the Playcrafter coming in game 2 against the control deck, we can really destroy the Teferi. They played Teferi on curve on turn 5, then we slap down the Playcrafter. They don't have a counterspell. They're sacrificing the Teferi, so that's another way that we can deal with Teferi. Moving on though into the Golden Demise, this is strictly against the the mono white. The -2/-2, if we don't have Ascend, it's going to affect our board state. But with the History of Benalia's out there, and the mono white Odonto Vanguard, the -2/-2 effect board sweeper is going to be really solid. So yeah, that's for the tokens, or even against Selesnya tokens. But Selesnya tokens is just crazy sometimes. I mean, they can really just go out of control. But you can slap this against them too. Hopefully you'll be able to clear some of their stuff with like March of the Multitudes or whatever. And then this 2 status statues. If you're going against Conclave Tribunals or treasure maps, slap 2 more into your main deck. You can find room. And then to finish off our sideboard, me personally, I'm going with the Gruesome Menageries, because if there is something to the likes of Cleansing Nova or Deafening Clarion, Gruesome Menagerie is going to be really, really solid. It's going to refill our board state. We are playing with the Llanowar Elves, so we're going to have one drop that it could apply to the Gruesome Menagerie. We have a ton of 2-drops. We have 12 2-drops, and then we have a solid amount of 3-drops. We have, I think, 7. So it's going to be able to refill our board state just from one card. If they do 3-for-1 us or 4-for-1 us with a Cleansing Nova, we can refill our board with a Gruesome Menagerie in game 2. Or if you wanted, you can go with the Eldest Reborn if you are sensing that you want to have another win condition, or maybe you're playing with more Golgari Finebrokers where you can recur this because it is a permanent. It's a permanent enchantment. So you can recur the Eldest Reborn, but in my case, I decided not to. The Eldest Reborn is trading at 150, I think, at the moment, which kind of spiked up. But I got my place set before from the previous meta, so I got them when they were relatively affordable. But now at $1.50, I decided not to do it because it's going to increase our price point, but it is a really solid card. And in my mono black deck, this is one of my win conditions. I play a full play set because it's like a 3-for-1. I mean, they have to sacrifice a creature or a planeswalker, discard a card from their hand, and then all of a sudden you get one of their best cards from their graveyard or from your graveyard, so they have to deal with that. So it's just a nice, solid, good card advantage card. But in my case, as far as, if we're going to look at our financial, how much I've spent on the rebuild, I'm going with the Gruesome Menageries because it's much more affordable, and also it is good against Cleansing Novas, against those Teferi control decks. So the total upgrade cost, last I checked earlier before I did this video, it was about $14 if you did the TCG Direct, from TCG Player, or if you did it without TCG Direct with all the sellers. I think it came down to like $12.90ish or whatever. So this also including the sideboard. So we are going above our the Planeswalker deck challenge. I tried to do it for $5 to $10, but with the sideboard, another $5, for 15 total US dollars. I think it's a good budget limitation because in my mind, I'm trying to simulate trying to be a beginner player. It's just a nice, fun, unique challenge, and also, like I said before, after all this is said and done, it was a small, minor purchase, and all of a sudden we have a nice Planeswalker deck that we can have from the kitchen, for the kitchen table, off the shelf. When a brand new player comes, comes and plays, or you have more, your regular play group. In my case, I have a board game play group, and we can just play regular Magic, kitchen table Magic with these Planeswalker decks. So it's a nice, affordable, $13, $14 upgrade. Nothing crazy. And as far as how many cards we replaced a lot of cards. 77% of the deck has been replaced. Again, excluding the lands on sideboard. So, like I said before, the vast majority of the cards in the Planeswalker deck are just not up to par with the standard meta as far as FNM Magic. If you're going to go to an FNM, I do remember one time I played against a Planeswalker deck. I think he had like a Fat Pack bundle, or his friend upgraded the deck or something. I don't know, but it just wasn't powerful enough. He did beat me one time. I think I got land screwed or whatever, but I don't remember that occurrence, but it did happen. I'm not ashamed of it, but yeah, there are people out there who will try to play FNMs with a Planeswalker deck, maybe with the help of a friend or whatever. So that's kind of the whole point of this. But as you can see, the vast majority of the cards, I think with the Raw Caller Storms Planeswalker deck, I replaced like 83%, I think. I don't remember, but the vast majority of the cards, over 50%, over 60% of the cards are going to get replaced if you're trying to be competitive at FNM level. So, again, we're just trying to go 2 and 2, and yeah, that's the end of this. Let's go into actually open up the Planeswalker deck, because what I did is I actually ordered the cards, and then I'm going to open it on camera for you guys. So, check this out. All right, so here is Vraska. Oh, there we go. So again, I really like the packaging on this. They're doing a great job. Keep it up. Nice little visual for brand new players to really kind of see what this is all about. So yeah, let's crack this open. Alright. This is always so much fun. Okay, so, yep, boom. There is Vraska herself. Check that out. I really like the art on this one. I think it's super sweet. They did a really great job on the art. But as far as her power level, kitchen table meta, I think she's good. FNM standard meta, she's obviously really, really bad. As a matter of fact, all the Planeswalker deck, Planeswalkers are pretty bad, but, you know, again, this is just for fun. So yeah, that's Vraska. Okay, and really cool deck box. I really like this deck box, actually. Nice. 2 boosters, make sure to open that afterwards. Alright, so let's crack this open. Boom. Start off with the Beast Whisperer. Oh, oh. Okay, there we go. Oh, never mind. Oh, what a noob. There's a little thingamajig in here in the middle. Alrighty. Okay. So yeah, here is the default deck list. Again, Beast Whisperer is pretty solid, but I think you need to build around it with a bunch of like 1-drops and 2-drops. Dynamite. There's those Stone Glares. Really like the scene in this. Pretty cool. Then go straight into the creatures. So we're gonna replace this. Replaced. Replace. Replace. Again, I mean, these are pretty decent draft cards, but yeah. As far as what I have planned, gonna have to really take these out. Alright, so we're gonna keep these 2. Ransom Lurch is pretty decent as far as the graveyard payout, but again, I think we're gonna go with the Charnel Troll. So it's gonna be counterintuitive to play with Undergrowth. There's the Golgari Guild Gates. Nice. Here's the lands. Let me take this land base. Bada boom, bada bing. There we go. Alright. And then here's the non-creatures. Prey Pawn. And learn how to play. And then there's going to be a code for, if I remember, for playing with the deck in MTG Arena. Yeah, cool. So I'll keep that once I actually start playing MTG Arena. Yeah, so this is pretty cool. I mean, I think I already shown this before, but just a quick little reminder. What is this? Oh yeah, on your turn. Untap, upkeep, draw. There's no upkeep. Rip, upkeep. Oh well. They should really put that on there. just say like some cards, I don't know, a little upkeep thing, just say some cards, well, I don't know what you would squeeze in there. I just think it, yeah, upkeep, yeah, that's probably the reason why they don't have upkeep here, but just say, I don't know. I just think it's a bad habit if you don't teach upkeep to beginners. Alright, and here is the before you play handout. Play if you understand, then open the included. Yeah. Menace, Flying Undergrowth. Okay. Tap into greatness. Sweet art. No stranger to death. She's seen and caused enough of it. Okay, cool. And I really like this part. This is really, really necessary for beginners to understand how planeswalkers work. Even though planeswalkers are not a mass part of the game, I mean, as far as the planeswalker deck, you only get one. It's still good to know how they operate, because I remember being a beginner and not knowing how this works. So yeah, that's really nice to know. Alright, and let's open up the boosters. Booster number 1. Alrighty. Okay. Halberdier, Sworn Companions, Maximize Altitude, Torch Courier, Bards and Bats, Portcullis Vine, Brahelian Patrol, Boros Locket, Siege Worm, Electromancer, oh nice, Conclave Tribunal, Storm Guildmage, Grappling Sundew, oh sweet, nice, Risk Factory. Now do I want to make that a Rakdos burn deck, huh? Or should I sell it? Yeah, I don't know. Oh yeah, look at that. Huh. That is a great pull though, I really like that card. I wonder if it has gone down, I gotta check the price on that. Man. Alright. Pack number 2. Cosmotronic Wave, Sworn Companions, Small Mist, Project Bodyguard, Dowser Lights, Hex Fever, Iron Shell Beetle, Rosemane Centaur, Garrison Sergeant, Muse Drake, Chemist's Insight, sweet, Lidev Champion, Enhanced Surveillance, yeah. Oh, nice, sweet, so I just got, awesome. I mean, this is weird for the Vraska deck, but, yeah, cool, awesome. Sweet, okay. So we pulled an Experimental Friendly and Risk Factor. Alright, so everything's all sleeved up. So let's take a look. So we got our full play set of Llanowar Elves. And then we got the 2 Deadweights. Took one out. We have 4 Glowspore Shaman. So it's going to put 3 cards into our graveyard from our library. And if we need land fixing, we can do that by putting on top of our library. We have the Crawl Harpooners. So it's, I think, our only Undergrowth payoff, which contradicts the Charnel Troll, but, you know, we only have 3 Charnel Trolls, so it should be fine. Otherwise, it's just a, you know, 3/2 for 2 mana, pretty good. Then we have 4 Seeker Squires. I'm gonna, you know, help our land, fix our lands if we can draw a land, or you know, we can chum block with it, becomes a 2/3, or we can put something in the graveyard if it's a creature on top, bin it, put it into the graveyard, and this becomes a 2/3. So another solid 2-drop. Got 1 copy of Find Finality. I'm most likely be playing the Find, but if in a worst case scenario against you know, an aggro deck, We can use Finality, good for us. And then we're going to play 3 Charnel Trolls. So again, it does exile cards from our graveyard, which takes away from Undergrowth, but we only have the Curl Harpooners for Undergrowth. And I'm only playing with 3 because I think playing with 4, you know, the redundant copies kind of have diminishing returns since they all exile a card from the graveyard. So you don't want to be running out of ammunition in the graveyard too quickly. We're going to play 4 Midnight Reapers against Board Sweepers. Also just a solid card. 3-2. You know, if we trade chump block with one of our Land War Elves, for instance, we can draw a card. I'm going to play 1 Golgari Findbroker. I don't think we have the mana base to necessarily play this in multiples of 2 or 3. But I think the 1 copy is good enough to, you know, get 1 permanent, maybe like a Rite of Belzenok, or like a Deadweight, or just a creature card. And the Rite of Belzenok is going to be just another win condition. Yeah, of course it does take 3 turns to kind of get out there, but you know, in the meantime we're going to get chump blockers, and yeah, we'll see how that card plays out. So it's just a nice little one of. We're going to play 2 status statues, mainly for the flexibility of the statue part. Destroy target artifacts, or a creature, or enchantment. We're going to play 1 Tetsamok, just because, you know, I like this card with the mono black deck. And yeah, I think it's just nice as a solid one of. And we can take out some things with it. We're going to play 2 Vraska Stoneglare. It's the Planeswalker Deck challenge, so we can tutor our Vraska. So yeah, you know, we're going to keep that one. 1 Bounty on Might for a win condition, the 1 copy, and then Vraska herself. So check that out. She's looking pretty sweet. Oh, no, you can't really see the foil. Oh, there we go. Yeah, she has the foiling in her eyes, which I think is dope. That's pretty cool. She's pissed off. Alright. And then as far as our land base, we're gonna take away the Golgari Guild Gates because they do come into play tapped, so we're gonna be playing 12 swamps. And I kinda just try to make the swamps unique, because I think this is one of my favorite swamps, by the way. It's like a stairway into, I don't know, it's just kind of weird. I really like this one swamp though. But yeah, I just wanted different swamp art because you know, once this does come you know, off the shelf for beginners, they can look at the new art or look at different art for each of the lands. And then yeah, here's the forest. This is the one that came with the deck, the Guilds of Ravnica. Yeah, just 13 forests, 12 swamps. So maybe we might need to take out 1 swamp for 1 forest so we can play Land War Elves on curve, but I don't know, I might do some test shuffling and see how that goes. I think we're fine though, but yeah, let's check out the sideboard. So we have the Duresses against control decks, take out their Cleansing Novas or Teferi. Then the 4 Plague Crafters against, you know, Teferis or other Planeswalkers. You really want this to be coming from the sideboard against decks that aren't, you know, gonna just sacrifice like a 1/1 or like a 1 mana play. You want to be, you know, sacrificing their biggest creature, or, you know, Planeswalker, hopefully. And then we're going to play 3 Golden Demises against the Tokens deck, or, you know, mono white aggro. And then we're going to include 2 more status statues, just for the flexibility against, you know, enchantment decks, Conclave Tribunals, for instance. Then we have 2 Gruesome Menageries against, you know, again, the Cleansing Nova or the Deafening Clarion Ritual of Suit. If we see that in game 1, we put these in game 2. Maybe take out, I don't know. Well, learning what to take out it's kind of a skill that you got to learn. And it's gonna be, it's not like, you know, there's a set rule. It's gonna be different against every matchup. So you're gonna have to just kind of feel what you think is best at the time. Maybe something wasn't as good. You know, you just weren't as impressed for 1 card, and you just take that out. Maybe take out, or you can go with the strategy of just taking out 1 of each thing. So you can take out like 1 Land War Elf, and then one Ghostspore Shaman, and then like one Crawl Harpooner or something like that. Or, you know, in this case, I'd probably take out the Seeker Squire and keep these in because I think these are better with 3 power. So yeah, you're just gonna have to learn what you want to take out for the sideboard. But in this case, yeah, that's the F&M Planeswalker Deck Challenge. Gonna shelf this up and, you know, do some test runs as far as like drawing, see how it draws, how the land base is. And yeah, I'll compile my results for the F&M monthly battle report, and wish me luck.